Welcome back, everyone. I'm the Bella Gamer, and we're back. I am incredibly sorry, I guess, that none of these videos have been produced in the last 2 weeks. In fact, this is my first video back after being sick, and 2 weeks ago, or last week, I can't remember which at this point. No, 2 weeks ago, I had one video come out. It was the Vampire Final Thoughts. That I had pre-recorded. I did not record anything that week. I didn't record anything last week. And it's been murder. Honestly, the channel has slowed down significantly. Now, we're still doing pretty good. We still have had some people come onto the channel to sub, follow, whatever. And I highly appreciate you all. And I guess this is a good time to roll in. If you enjoy this kind of content, please like, follow, and subscribe. Because it's the only way to save this channel if, for whatever reason, I become sick again and I don't have pre-recorded content. That being the case, we're back and we're going to be rolling into things. We should be at like 900 subscribers by the time most people see this. And we'll be hitting 1,000, hopefully, by the end of the month. That is the goal, and we're almost pretty on track for that regardless. So I'm very excited because it means an evolution for the channel in a lot of different ways. A lot of people don't understand how much 1,000 subscribers actually means on YouTube. It's not big. It doesn't mean you make a bunch of money, but it opens a lot of doors that were closed to you before. So I'm very, very happy to be doing this and back making another video. So why don't we get right to it? Why don't we give you all what you all came here to see, which is the Bullet Dancer. And I'm going to say that this is more like a subclass than an actual archetype. So this archetype dedication works almost specifically for monks, even though non-monks can use a lot of the things that the Bullet Dancer provides. So when you get the Bullet Dancer archetype dedication, you gain access to firearms, weapon stocks and bayonets. And whenever your proficiency in another type of weapon or whatever goes up, your proficiency in these goes up as well. Which, again, if you're a fighter, that's actually pretty good because that adds on to your already really high category of attack weapons you have available. The problem is that in order to become, a Bullet Dancer in the first place, well, one, it's uncommon, which I don't mention a lot, but this one's uncommon because it gives you access to guns, which your GM may or may not wish to have in their setting. Now, Pathfinder 2E's guns are not very strong. They're very centered around crits, and when they crit, they do a lot of damage. But other than that, they're pretty balanced, in my opinion. They did a really good job balancing guns, and as unrealistic as it is, it does make guns at least a choice rather than mandatory for a lot of builds. So yeah, you have to have access to guns. And, I mean, technically it doesn't say that as a prerequisite, but, it's uncommon. Your GM has to allow you. It does give you access to guns, after all. You also have to be experts in your unarmored defense and trained in unarmed attacks. Now, everyone is trained in unarmed attacks. I don't even know why they put that in the requirements, because literally every class gets it, but whatever. You have to be trained in unarmed attacks, and you have to be expert in unarmored defense. Now, that means that at level 2, which is the earliest you could possibly get it, the only classes that can get this is technically the Monk and the Champion. Champion has no reason to take this whatsoever, but it is technically available to you at level 2. The most other classes will get it somewhere around between level 5 and level 7, depending on when your armor proficiency goes up. Other than that, I just don't see it. I don't see why any other class would. Now, here's the biggest reason why. It's actually just the archetype dedication that really makes me feel like this is just for monks. Because you get access to a stance. you get the, what's it called? The Bullet Dancer stance, yes. And essentially what happens is while you're in this stance, the only kind of strikes you can make are one with your simple firearms, bayonets, or weapon stocks. That's it. And you can use this with flurry of blows and any monk feats and or abilities that require an unarmed strike that are asking you to specifically make unarmed strikes. Other than that, it's just a stance that gives you nothing else. There's nothing here. I'm looking at it again just to verify. And nope, all this stance does is let you use monk-based features with a bayonet, simple firearm, or weapon stock. That's it. That's all it does. Now, there's a lot of dedications that I feel like you can take the first one, even though the initial dedication doesn't give you really anything. I would, for instance, take a martial artist as a monk because you get access to monk-based feats in it, and you get access to some actually unarmed strikes that are really, really handy to have on monks. Now, I will say that we also use the free Archetype dedication bonus, and I recommend every group should because it definitely can diversify your players. But, you know, this is one of the very few feats that I would say actually makes it a little worthwhile to take if you're not using free Archetype dedication, because this is just a different monk path you can take for your character. And I think that's really cool, and I think that's really awesome. But the initial stance doesn't actually give you anything if you're playing any other class. Obviously, you could multi-class into monk and then have the features. That seems like a lot of work to make Bullet Dancer work. Honestly, this really only works for monk. Maybe a gunslinger if they went multi-class monk to give themselves a more melee kind of focus too. But I don't know. Anyway, let's continue on with the feats. Brawling focus is really good. Gives you critical specialization with unarmed strikes. It's kind of pointless it's kind of pointless. Yeah, let's see. Unarmed strikes. If you have monastic weaponry, you also gain credit. Yeah. No, I don't know why they put brawling focus in here. Other than it's, I guess, just another. It's a subclass for monk. I don't know, because the thing is, right? Brawling focus doesn't work with the Bullet Dancer feat or the stance, because you can't use unarmed strikes in that stance. Now, maybe I'm missing something here. You can use your other monk feats and or monk abilities that normally require unarmed attacks. So is this saying that your brawling focus can give you access to your critical specialization effects for bayonets, weapon stocks, and simple firearms? Is that what I'm hearing? I don't know. If that's the case, cool. I would actually probably, if someone gave me a good enough excuse for it, I'd probably rationally say, yeah, sure. I think that's the intent with it being here. And it's not like critical specialization is that big a deal. But this seems super out of place in this whole archetype. This archetype's really weird. Anyway, let's continue. Pistol Twirl is pretty good if you're using one-handed range weapons. You know, hand crossbows or firearms. Actually, yeah, just a one-handed range weapon. Pistol Twirl is pretty good. It gives you the ability to feint a target within your weapon's first range increments. It's pretty solid. Overall, feinting is a very powerful mechanic for fighting enemies that are not, flanking with your friends. And not only that, but you can't even gain flank benefits using ranged weapons anyway. So this is actually one of the very few ways you can ensure an enemy gets flat-footed using a ranged weapon. And this is really good for non-monks as well. But again, if you want to go all to this trouble just to get Pistol Twirl, go for it, I guess. But this is it's a good feat. Don't get me wrong. It's a really, really good feat. And it works perfectly with the Bullet Dancer, giving you the ability to knock your opponents off guard to get a really nice shot, get a higher chance of critting, which allows you to apply Fatal more often than not. or you're using a hand crossbow and you just want to do more damage to a hand crossbow. Black powder boost is really good, honestly, in my opinion. Just because it has so many uses outside of combat as well. Essentially, whenever you're making a leap, high jump, or long jump, you can use a loaded firearm that you're currently wielding to boost it, getting a 10-foot status bonus to the distance moved during the leap / high jump, long jump. You can change the actions depending on which one you're using. Overall, this is really good. It gives you the ability to boost how far you can make jumps. That can be really, really handy. 10 feet is actually a lot of distance to add on to a jump as well. And it can make some characters with a leap move faster than their move speed, which is nuts. Granted, you have to have a loaded firearm, and obviously you discharge the firearm, as it says here, and so you have to reload it before you can even use the gun again. But I can just imagine many ways this can be used in combat and mostly out of combat. Overall, it's a really good utility feat and good for exploration. Bullet Dancer Burn is pretty good. This is going to be a big bread and butter kind of benefit for Bullet Dancer in a lot of ways. So essentially how it works is while you're in your Bullet Dancer stance, if you have struck an enemy with either a bayonet or a reinforced stock, you can make a ranged strike against an opponent in melee range without provoking attacks of opportunity. And do that to be in range for this. Let's see, the next range strike you make against the opponent doesn't trigger reactions. That would trigger on a ranged attack, such as attack of opportunity. So as long as you've successfully struck them with a melee attack, it doesn't really matter where you are, even if you somehow get moved away from them. They can't use an attack that's based on you using a ranged weapon. Of course, you're still vulnerable to other types of attack of opportunities for whatever reason, but that's pretty good overall, especially because one of the biggest weaknesses of using guns in melee is enemies with attack of opportunity who will attack you when you attempt to fire and or reload your gun because they have the manipulate action. So this is pretty good, and it has a flex. So if you strike an enemy with your ranged weapon, you can then strike them with the bayonet or the reinforced stock and do, what was it? It was 1 or 2 damage. You deal 1 additional fire damage per weapon die. That's really good. The requirements for this is weird. I don't know why it doesn't also require you to be in Bullet Dance Stance, because you have to be in it to get the benefits. But okay, whatever. It's fine, I guess. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that this requires is that you're using a weapon, and your weapon has to have the reinforced stock and or bayonet. So overall, this is really good. This allows you to be in melee range and attack your enemies. And not only that, but the benefits fall off at the end of your next turn. What makes this really good is you can strike an enemy with a melee strike and then wait till your next turn, reload your weapon, do whatever, and then fire with the higher penalty for your with the higher, attack ability with your gun, hopefully to get that fatal, and then you can go ahead and strike them with the weapon. And if you can successfully hit, you can do it again, pretty much. Now, it doesn't work with crossbows with bayonets or reinforced stocks, which is really weird, unless crossbows have been added to firearms. I'm not 100% sure on that. But regardless, it does say firearms specifically. So, I don't know. But overall, pretty decent feat. Black Powder Blaze is a good feat, but I don't know how it's supposed to work thematically. So you use 2 actions. You stride, then use Black Powder Boost. Now, what's good about this is it doesn't you can't expand the action. So it's assumed that you can, when you stride, you can use it as part of the long jump version or high jump version of Black Powder Boost, or as well as the leap version. So that's my interpretation of it, and that's what I think it's meant to be used for. So you can use this to get a lot of movement. You're going to be moving really, really far, especially because you are using Black Powder Boost, which gives you a plus 10 status bonus to the leap, long jump, high jump, whatever that you're doing. this is really good in a multitude of ways. But one of the weird things about this one, and one of the reasons why this particular feat is as good as it is you get all this movement for 2 actions, right? And then you can make a strike at any point during the black powder boost portion. So however far you leap, high jump, long jump, whatever, you can essentially make a range strike with the weapon during that. Now, this doesn't make sense to me because the whole premise of black powder boost is that you have boosted yourself with the weapon, shooting it to boost yourself, and then somehow you swing the weapon and fire at someone else. Like, I don't know if I'm just missing something here. You have to be wielding a loaded firearm. You have to be for black powder boost. Yeah, you just stride, use it, and then make a ranged strike with the required weapon at any point during the black powder boost. So, I mean, like, if it would have made sense if you, like, fired the gun and then swiftly, I don't know, put it below you and launch yourself or something. But no, you could do it. You get boost at the end, and then at the end of the jump, make a ranged strike. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. So, Black powder boost has this weird wording in it, right, where it says you discharge the gun. You essentially fire the gun. You don't make a strike with it, but it's assumed that you have to reload the gun because it has to be loaded, and to fire a gun is to discharge it. So it only makes sense that you would have to reload it afterwards. I don't know. Like I said, this whole archetype is so wonky. If you don't look too hard at the rules, if you just squint and just nod along with it, it's really cool. This feat's amazing. You get a really good movement bait, like a leap with +10, again, is going to be faster than most characters can even move. So you're going to be essentially striding twice, only the second stride is a leap, so you can even leap over gaps or whatever, difficult terrain. And then you can fire your gun at any point during that leap. And then you still have an action remaining. That's actually really good action economy. It would feel really good in game. Like I said, it just doesn't make sense on like how it is in world is supposed to work. But whatever, it's a really good feat. Snapshot. This one appears in a lot of other archetype dedications. It comes from Ranger originally. It essentially allows you to use a ranged weapon for things like attack of opportunity, making it so that the gun only has a reach of 5. So they essentially, they treat ranged weapons as a melee weapon, kind of, where if an enemy is adjacent to you and does, whatever that provokes attack of opportunity, you can now use a weapon to shoot them rather than using only a melee weapon, because attack of opportunity typically has make a melee strike. This allows you to use a ranged weapon, assuming that it gets a range of 5 feet. So it's pretty good. Perfect on the bullet dancer because obviously you're going to be in the thick of it with your guns anyway. So this allows you to hit enemies. The only thing I don't like about it is with most guns, they don't have the reload speed is going to be something that it's either going to be done on your turn or it's not. So you might not have access to this depending on if your weapon is loaded or not. Granted, your weapon also has a bayonet or a reinforced stock, so you can just use attack of opportunity normally anyway. This is also really good because it also can be used with Monk Standstill, which is a pretty good attack of opportunity based feat as well. So, again, it works perfectly for the bullet dancer and what the bullet dancer wants. It has a little bit more jank just because guns and reloading and all that kind of stuff. Bullet Dancer Reload is honestly really good. You make a strike with your ranged weapon and then you reload your weapon with the same action. Yeah, you strike with a simple firearm, then interact to reload it with one action. It's good. It keeps your gun loaded. It is a flourish, so you cannot use this for like 3 strikes in a row or flurry of blows. Can't use it with flurry of blows anyway because this is a separate kind of action. But still, this is really good. It allows you to much more easily fire your weapon 3 times or twice in a round, potentially 3 times if you're hasted. So, that's a really good overall feat. I think that this one works really well, and it just allows you to keep the pressure on. Though monks do have a lot of flourishes, and there's some other flourishes in this as well. So it's going to be competing with some of your other skills, but I think this is overall really good, especially if you're using a very high damage gun and you just want to fire that gun more often. This just works with it. Trick shot. Trick shot is very weird. It's 2 actions, and I feel like it should have been a variable 1 or 2 action. So essentially what happens is you make a simple DC. It's DC 15 to do something, and rather than hitting a target, you do one of 2 effects. You either push an object 10 feet in any direction, an unintended object specifically, or you shoot an explosive and cause it to blow up. I don't like this feat. I think this feat doesn't need to exist because the thing is, right, if a player asked me, hey, can I shoot, the crystal ball off the table like this represents, I'd be like, sure, make a ranged strike against it. Bam, they do it. And, I could even set it at whatever DC. And it's just 1 action for them to do it. Same with the whole exploding thing. Like, if you shoot an explosive charge or whatever, you can set it off, dealing a very specific amount of damage. I felt like if the DM didn't want the players to suddenly shoot these things, they wouldn't be there. And if they did, they'd want the players to shoot them and would only use 1 action to do so. It also says in this feat that if none of the objects exist, the DM will tell you beforehand so you don't waste your actions. I don't know. The reason why it's 2 actions is because the whole exploding barrel thing does 6d6 damage to everything in a, 20-foot burst, which is pretty good. That's pretty good, and the only limitation is the number of exploding objects in your environment. There's not a lot of environments with a lot of exploding objects. Trick shot is really weird. I don't really like it. I feel like in situations where such objects are available, it would be a single action, and if not, then you can't use this anyway. Now, I will say that the 2 actions is kind of good, because if an enemy gets crit disarmed and they drop their weapon, you can use this to shoot their weapon 10 feet away from them. That's potentially good, and 2 actions I feel is a good enough balance for that, because you're forcing the enemy to move and retrieve the weapon, which is 2 actions as well. So, I feel like that balances out overall. I don't know. I feel like trick shot is just something that just should have been a DM decided action and doesn't require a feat. But if you disagree, take the feat, and I hope your GM allows you to use it to its fullest extent, because it is pretty good overall. And not only that, but I like the fact that it gives the DM essentially parameters for things like exploding barrels in their environment. So, I think this could be really, really worth it if you're pretty inventive and you're in the proper environments for it. Ranged disarm. You have to be using a simple firearm for this one, as a lot of the other feats require, but I feel like this one I need to be mentioned specifically because some of the other feats are a little bit loosey-goosey, whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, ranged disarm. You can disarm at a range using a weapon that's loaded. That's it. And and not only that, but you make a range attack roll rather than an athletics check, which is pretty good, honestly, because the Bullet Dancer Monk, I don't feel, is very motivated to use athletics as one of their skills. So this makes it so you don't actually have to invest in athletics and still be able to disarm enemies. What I don't like is that disarm sucks overall, and the most you can do is give an enemy -2 on attacks until the start of their next turn. It's silly. Is it the start of their next turn? Let's see, let me look at disarm real quick. We can, until the start... Oh, no. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Until the start of that creature's turn, they have a -2 on attacks, which is not great because unless they're using attack of opportunity, most enemies don't attack outside of their turn, and this can only be used on your turn. And it's not a reaction. The only good disarms are reactions, because if you do it during their turn, then for the rest of that turn and until the start of the next turn, they get that -2 to attacks. So I don't know. I don't think this one's a very good feat, but it has its thematics. Shooting the gun out of someone's hand, especially if you crit. And honestly, because you're using your attack rather than athletics, you may have a higher chance if you have a very high dex. And this is one of the very few ways you can use dex to disarm. So, I overall think that this is decent, but not great. Whew, okay, we're almost done. I'm sorry. This one had a lot of feats, but also I feel like the Bullet Dancer requires a lot of explanation because this is a very complicated archetype, more than most, and some of the repercussions are not very apparent. So hopefully this video is helping people who are looking at Bullet Dancer Monk. I think it's really good, and I think, again, this is mostly just a monk subtype kind of archetype. But hey, you know what? If you have a really good build that has Bullet Dancer in it to some decent effect, let me know in the comments down below. I would be very curious to see what non-monk Bullet Dancer builds y'all can come up with. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue on with Ricochet Shot. Ricochet Shot is pretty easy. Essentially, you aim for any kind of surface within your first range increment, and then you can use that angle to determine, whether an enemy has cover or not. It's good if you're in a situation where lots of enemies have cover. If you're in a very gun-heavy setting, cover becomes a lot more of a big factor because that cover can be the difference between getting fatally shot and just taking normal gun damage. So, if the setting might determine whether Ricochet Shot actually really helps you out. So, overall, this feat can be really good if you have a very range-based setting. Also, this allows you to shoot around your allies because if there's an ally standing between yourself and the target, you actually give that target simple cover by, having the necessity to shoot around your friend or one of them or one of their allies if you're trying not to shoot that one. If there's a bunch of goblins standing around, you want to hit the third one, you got to make some calculations for the two in front of it. So overall, this can be a really good feat, but I think it's a lot more situational because cover is not very common, I find. Showstopper is really good. It essentially allows you to use Pistol Twirl with everyone within your weapon's first range increment. It's very solid. It can make a bunch of enemies flat-footed to you, and if you crit them, you can make them flat-footed to everyone. And you only have to make one deception check rather than rolling for each enemy. So if you roll really, really well, you can give your team a massive bonus with Showstopper. Overall, one of the best feats in Bullet Dancer, Pistol Twirl going into Showstopper. Just really, really good. Has so much potential to just crit success into something great for your team. Or if not, you get a lot of enemies who are flat-footed to you. So, pretty good. Two weapon or twin weapon? Twin weapon, two weapon fusillade. This one's so weird. It's a gunslinger feat, so I kind of understood why they put it into. So, as I mentioned before, Bullet Dancer is more or less a monk style, like sub-archetype, whatever you want to look at it. It benefits most if you're a monk. Not always, and like I said, there's some gunslingers that could take it. The problem I have with this is when you have... So what this feat does, right? You use an action to attack with two weapons. One must be a firearm. Does it have to be a simple one in this one? One must be a loaded firearm or crossbow. No, so it does not have to be a simple one. So yeah, you have one ranged weapon, one melee weapon. Or you can have two ranged weapons if you really want. You use an action, you can fire twice, or you can melee strike, and then fire your other weapon. You essentially get two strikes with one action. No save in the multi-attack penalty, you just apply them as normal because it doesn't state otherwise. And yeah, so I don't like this because one, Flurry of Blows does exactly the same thing. And because Bullet Dancer Stance allows you to use firearms, there's no benefit. Literally, there's no benefit. They're both flourishes. You just cannot do them both. So the only reason you would take this is if you're not a monk, which I can understand, and that's really good. But like I said, that Bullet Dancer works best if you're a monk. It doesn't have to, and I guess this is the biggest thing. All these feats, besides the very first one, do not require kind of anything monk and can benefit characters of all different styles. The biggest issue I'm finding is that if you really wanted to have this kind of play style, Anyway, you either should have been a monk or you're playing a gunslinger who, wants some more cool in combat kind of stuff, which is okay, but you're still picking this up later because you gotta be expert in unarmored defense. So, yeah, this one's good if you're not a monk, but you should be a monk when you're picking Bullet Dancer. I don't know. That's it. It's good if you don't already have Flurry of Blows. That's it. This is a really good action. Don't let me dissuade you. This is a really good action. Granted, you could always multi-class and take, never mind. It doesn't matter. It's a really good action if you're not already playing a monk. So that's going to be it for Bullet Dancer. I'm so sorry Bullet Dancer took such a long time. I'm going to cut some time out of this video, but it's going to be near a 30-minute video, I can already tell. And I don't know, it's just because Bullet Dancer, it just feels really weird. It feels kind of jank. It's a really cool monk sub-archetype, or a subclass type archetype, if you look at it that way. And if you add it to Gunslinger, it can be a pretty decent one to give you some other Gunslinger feats in an archetype dedication, which is always really good for your class in a combat sense. But I don't know. If anyone has some good Bullet Dancer builds, let me know down in the comments below. I would really like to see them, and you get extra points if they're not monk, because I feel like for monk, this is a very self-explanatory archetype dedication, and you could take Bullet Dancer with monk 1 to 20 easy. So that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed. This is a very weird one to get back started with, but I do honestly think that the Bullet Dancer is really good. Even if it was just limited strictly to monk, I would like it because it gives monks a whole nother playstyle option, which is really good. I just find it weird when you put it in the in the mindset of it being to any other class. And because of that, 2-weapon Fusillade, which is the last feat, doesn't make sense for a monk because it can't use Flurry of Blows anyway. So, I don't know. Or with Flurry of Blows anyway. So, I don't know. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. Good luck with your games. Leave the battle luck to me. And we'll see you next time. Bye.